All right, we are ready to resume after inhaling some quick sandwiches. But don't worry, there will be a reception with champagne at 4 o'clock, cheese platter. Now, I introduced to you, and I'm just going to do it by name and just 3 words again. Joseph Press, he and I had a conversation 2 years ago, a little bit longer than 2 years ago. Went over to bar 6, right? And designed the whole thing in an hour. It's almost like WorldCom, right? On the back of a napkin. A $45 billion company, right? Now, Joseph is a New Yorker, pretty much. You will tell us more about you. Yeah. Right now, he lives in Zurich. But he makes online teaching an entire new world. He is with that other company that rhymes with Bush, Geloid Bush. And they're ahead of the curve. They already had, for a while, strategic design thinking in their company, and so he became instrumental in our program. I'm very happy to have him on board, and I'm very happy to have him in New York, right? How fortunate that you could schedule your business trip at the same time. Thanks for being here, Joseph. Take it away.
Thank you, John. And I also want to thank the committee, particularly Monica and Alia, 2 of my former students, for convincing Andrew and Mark, and where Mark is, to give me the opportunity to come and speak at a very special day. And I think this is a special day because of the progress that we've made since that back of the napkin sketch. And the progress that we've made, and for me was very, very special to hear, as I mentioned to the committee while we were eating for lunch, not only from my 2 former students, but other students as well, that the progress that has been made is to really make this program a transformative experience. There are a number of programs that are out there. Some of them focus more on tools. One tool set, I think we were probably all aware of, design thinking. There are other programs out there that are more the analytics space, and we've had some really great feedback from all the conversations this morning. But what really makes this program work, I think John and the other faculty members, and we spoke briefly about this yesterday, was our ability to really come together and encourage all of the students to go through a transformative experience. It's a mouthful, that word. So what I briefly wanted to do was, in the spirit of these personal essays, just give you a little bit of background about how I ended up here. It's been a journey, and I think it's a journey that for many of you, you have begun. It is a journey that will take a number of years, so I want to briefly speak about that. And I also want to speak about what it's actually like to be on the forefront of bringing disciplines together, breaking boundaries, bringing design into business, bringing business. We've been talking a lot about it. It's very much a part of the program to really inculcate the next generation of leaders to bring those disciplines together to create shared value. And so I'd like to tell a little bit about what I've been doing, really fresh in the trenches. So what I wanted to just be clear about, this is not going to be a Prezi-like consulting presentation. This is not going to be a discourse about design thinking. I'll probably mention technology and the rest of it, but again, it's really trying to help all of us in this room move the institutional goals forward, and those goals are to create the next generation of design leaders. And I think we've made significant headways to do that. And again, kudos to John, Jessica, the rest of the team. All the studio faculty here, Jerome, Rhea, it's just been fabulous to see how we've all been able to work together and make this such a success. So, move to the personal story. And this is actually a pretty emotional event for myself, because when I started my creative explorations, it was at Carnegie Mellon, where I started to realize that not only was I a creative individual, partially inspired by my mother, who's an art teacher, also inspired by George Lucas, going to Star Wars when it came out back in the day. But when I got to Carnegie Mellon, I also had the opportunity to start building. And this idea of building had just a significant impact. And building, when I talk about building, I'm talking about taking 2x4s and 2x6s with a drill and screws about this big. And we actually built booths at Carnegie Mellon. For those of you who are aware, there's a spring carnival. And everybody, fraternities, sororities, other groups on campus, they actually build booths. And that was sort of my inspiration for understanding that I really love building. I then went to the architecture department and completed my first year there and went through another formative experience, the design studio. And to this day, and my students know how much I was engaged, how it impacted myself personally, the experience of the design studio. Right? I'm curious, how many of you have a formal design degree? Okay. Now for those of you who don't, I'll fast forward. Actually, I'm not going to fast forward. For those of you who don't, please remind me that I have something to say. If I don't say it towards the end, then remind me to come back to that. But for those of you who had the opportunity to actually go through that intensive studio experience, there are a couple of things that I think are very, very important when going out into the larger world. Number one is the importance of being able to sketch, being able to put ideas out. And this is what I learned in the studio. Quickly, easily, something that's disposable. And why is that so important? Because that starts the ideation process. It also starts the communication and the dialogue that is so important of taking those ideas to the next level, begin to build them out. So sketching is something very important. Another thing that I learned was the importance of passion. Passion in the sense of what keeps me up for 2 or 3 days, and this was back when there was no Red Bull. Okay, so we would take, I don't know if anybody remembers these no-dos. No? Okay, and trust me, they did not taste as good as a bottle of Red Bull. So, what keeps somebody passionate about that work that they know that they're going to have to present to their mentors, other faculty, and most importantly, their peers? So this idea of passion is another important lesson that I had from the studio. So these experiences then led me to start my master's degree in architecture. So I finished in management and minored in architecture, started at MIT, and I was in the architecture department, completed my first year, and there was something that I realized when I got to MIT. MIT, this was in '88, the Media Lab had just started. The architecture department was in a state of absolute chaos. Okay? That was before Bill Mitchell came and really took the architecture department to the level that we know of today. I was very envious of GSD up the road at Harvard, so much so I tried to get in, and fortunately I was rejected. And I'll tell you why I'm fortunate in a second. So I took those experiences. When I got to MIT, there was so much there to learn. Okay? And again, the reason it's important in '88 was the internet didn't exist. So being at a place like MIT was unique at that point in time because you could say that the whole world was there. Today, the whole world is wherever you're sitting. It's at home. It's here. It's wherever you are. So it was a very different period. And I realized that the other important aspect of my personality was it wasn't just about building. It wasn't just about loving to sketch. It wasn't only about being very passionate. It was also about a real thirst for learning. And after that first year, I realized that there was just so much going on there. I didn't really know what I wanted to learn because I was so curious. I was pulled in many different directions. So I fortunately was rejected from Harvard, went to work in an architecture firm in Pittsburgh, which is where I grew up. And about a year later, being somebody who was curious to discover the world, bought a one-way ticket to Germany. I worked at a German practice in Cologne, and then started a personal journey, ended up in Israel, where I continued to work, and most importantly, I also started teaching. And I was teaching architecture at the Bezalel School for Design in Jerusalem. And it was there that I found my passion because it brought everything together. Learning, sketching, building, all of it came together. That was when I decided to go back to MIT, finish my master's in architecture. I continued to get a PhD because my intention was to stay in teaching. For a number of reasons, moved to Paris, worked for DGW. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that architectural firm. They really pioneered workplace design, and this is in the late 90s. So it wasn't today. Today the conversations that I hear from CEOs are, well, we need to be like Google. We need to have swing sets. We need to have swimming pools. We need to have creative spaces. Late 90s, that was not the topic of conversation. Okay. So I think similar to all of you having that career crisis, I had my career crisis in 2000. And in the spirit of openness amongst peers and colleagues, I'll let you in on a secret, which I don't tell too many people. I had a very good friend who was in consulting and liked that, the curiosity, the changes, the clients. It was cool. And so what I did was put together my CV, wrote down all of my experiences, except there was one word missing. Anybody guess what word was missing? Close, architecture. Okay? So I did not put down the word architecture in my CV because I knew if I did that, I would not be able to get into a big five at the time, big five consulting firm. I was accepted and started at Deloitte. I was living in Paris, working in Germany, and got involved with projects that frankly I had no idea what was going on. There were big system implementations, process reengineering, some of the things, Andrew, that you mentioned as well. That was all new to me because, hey, I was an architect, I was a designer, I just didn't tell anybody. And I think what happened in parallel, unbeknownst to me, was that the design world and all the theory that I had studied from the 50s and 60s around design thinking, Nigel Cross and Herbert Simon, all of the material that those of you who had the chance to take my class are forced. I say, here's the list of readings. I suggest you have that on your bookshelf. That world was coming together with the business world. And so for about 7 or 8 years, I practiced as a management consultant, having conversations with executives, understanding what are the business problems and how we as an external organization could actually help solve some of those business problems. And in the back of my mind, every project that I did, I was building something. I was drafting things, and drafts in the sense of sketching. I was very passionate about what I was doing, primarily because I actually saw clients learn. I saw them grow, I saw them develop, and it was very rewarding because I really felt like I was back in that educational model. And what's very, very interesting over probably the last 5 years, so 5 years ago I actually transferred to our New York office, and I was responsible for setting up our social media practice. And now, all of a sudden, things were coming even more together because technology was being used to build communities of practice, build communities of experts and sharing knowledge. We also had much more of an emphasis on agile design methodologies where you actually put out sketches, get conversation, get feedback, iterate and improve. And 2 years ago, when John and I met, I was really just on the cusp of personally bringing together those two worlds. And that was why, again, I thank John and the institution and Joel Towers, absolutely, Joel, for connecting us. I actually, just so everyone's aware, I stalked Bruce Nussbaum for about a half a year until I finally got him to respond to one of my emails. And I said, Bruce, I really like what you're writing. Let's get together and have a coffee. That led to a conversation with Joel, led to a conversation with John, and eventually led to where we are today. So personally, it's been just a wonderful journey. And it's just a pleasure to see the institution really facilitating, I would actually say fast-tracking the journey that's taking me, God, I don't want to think how many, definitely 20 plus, I won't go more than that. It's wonderful to see an institution that's actually fast-tracking that journey, accelerating that journey in ways that I could only have dreamed of a number of years ago. So now I want to switch just a little bit to taking all those experiences into some of the client work. And just a couple months ago, I started working in a project in Vevey in Switzerland. I can't mention the company, but for those of you who know Vevey, there's only one company there. And they have asked us to digitalize their executive learning center. Okay? So you have to imagine for I think it's a $30 billion company, the executives are pretty high up there. And this project has been just a wonderful experience because I've been able to do three things. Number one, redesign educational processes. Number two, design the learning platforms, the apps, the website, so the technology. And frankly, I've been very much inspired by Google+. So we've been actually able to design with that. And most interestingly and most importantly, I think, actually redesign the space itself. Okay? It's a building that was designed in the late 80s, and there's been some nice opportunities to improve the space or to align the spaces to actually amplify the types of learning experiences that we're designing. So, what's the reality in all this? Okay? The reality is that the designers that are on the team don't know how to sketch. I was at the architect's office a couple of weeks back, and I said, look, we need to start generating some interior perspectives to really convince leadership to invest a significant amount of money to go forward and change everything. It's not just the environment, it's just not the interfaces, it's the whole pedagogic model. So they said, well, what do you mean? So I said, we need to put together some quick sketches, okay? Nothing that's going to say we've decided, nothing that's set in stone, just to get the excitement, get the enthusiasm. What do you mean? I picked up the pencil and I started to sketch. I said, this is what it looks like. Okay, we're going to put some people. Oh, we don't do that anymore. I said, what do you mean you don't do that anymore? Oh, no, we don't do that anymore. Everything's done in Google Sketch, in SketchUp. And it was just a shock. It was a shock. So going back to the question of who has a design degree, okay? In that specific skill, that specific competency, sketching, okay? The ability to start a conversation, the ability to get ideas out quickly. Young designers don't necessarily have that. And I've been struggling with the designers on my team because they're doing everything in Azure or Balsamic. So it's wireframes down to the pixel, and it's a challenge. I've had similar conversations with leadership from the business side about changing the educational model. What's the educational model that we've been pushing? Project-based learning, simulation. Sound familiar? That's what we're doing here. But leadership at this organization, leadership, I'm talking about program directors who are responsible for delivering training to an elite group of executives, they don't want to change. They want to continue essentially what we're doing now. It's not exactly, but it's that one directional, that I'm giving you something, you're absorbing it. Well, those days are done. And I've said to program directors in my course, and I'm very honored to be able to refer to what we're doing here, okay, specifically in this context. In my course, I put together a syllabus, of course, but frankly, I've learned just as much from the students as they have from me. They have brought, the whole example of Masra City, Masar, okay? Norman Foster, totally recreating the urban experience in Abu Dhabi. I didn't know about that. Okay? It's a very different model. So another, I think, very important example, the business community talks about passion. So if you guys are on LinkedIn or on Twitter, you'll see a lot of posts about passion, how important it is to be passionate. But I can tell you there's not a hell of a lot of passion in the corporate world. And that's where, again, you'll see the boundaries between business and design. There is so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity. And it really will come down to this. I'm talking to most of you under 35. It's going to come down to your generation to bring into all industries, all fields, a passion, a desire to build, a desire to quickly sketch and start a collaborative conversation. And it's ultimately going to depend on your individual proclivity to learn. And as I've gone through my journey, and I've seen my colleagues that I've worked with on either my teams or my mentors, I've become more and more convinced that it has less to do with the formal title of the education you receive, and much more to do with your own personality. For those of us who are curious, for those of us who want to discover, for those of us who want to change, you can put the moniker designer. Just like somebody decided, with all due respect, to put the moniker on this invite, innovation consultant. If I had read innovation consultant from Switzerland coming to speak at Parsons, I probably would have stayed outside. So I guess what I would like everyone to be inspired about is, number one, it is possible. It is possible to bring together these currently disparate worlds, although those boundaries are disintegrating. Number two, there is a real need. There is a real need to understand problems at a societal level, at an organizational level, and even at an individual level, to understand those problems and to begin to craft solutions to address those. But it really depends on you. It depends on you, it depends on us also within the faculty. Because we are just one role model, but certainly an important role model. And what is so wonderful, and again, the best example was to hear the four of you sharing a similar transformative experience. And that really attests to the strength not only of the faculty and really belief in the innovative educational model that we're delivering, but it also attests to yourselves as individuals, as learners, as professionals, taking the next step in your career and really living some of the fundamental aspects of, call it a designer. You love to build, you love to create, you love to sketch, you're passionate about what you do. You want to put it under the title of designer, fine. But frankly, you could change that title because those kinds of behaviors are within you. So, with that, I want to, again, thank you and look forward to continuing the journey together.